Hello, this is attorney Louize Fiore with Aquabelli Law. So I have been seeing viral videos about this new law, Dignity Act, and that's going to legalize everyone who's been here for over 7 years and can pay certain fines, and it doesn't matter how you came in, and you're going to be able to get your paperwork, and yay for Trump or despite Trump, depending on the viral video that you see, it's either because of Trump or despite Trump, we're still being able to get this law. I'm sorry, guys, it is not a law. It's not actually a law. So the Dignity Act is a real piece of legislation. So that part is true. It's essentially a piece of legislation that is still being contemplated and still being argued in Congress. Specifically, it's still in the House. Specifically, it's still in a subcommittee in the House. It hasn't even passed vote in the House. It's not made it to the Senate. So it's not going to make it to President Trump's desk anytime soon for signature because it's still in the House. It is a piece of legislation that has been circling around, at least some variation of it, since really DACA. So for those of you who remember, DACA was an executive order that was done through President Obama. He ended up having to do it as an executive order because he was not able to get Congress to essentially get its act together and get a bill in front of him for him to be able to sign as law. So because of that, he did an executive order, which unfortunately has left DACA recipients in limbo because depending on who's president, it is either back on or it's taken off. So if you remember Trump, the first Trump administration, it was taken off. It was suspended for a while. Then it wasn't suspended. Then some people could apply. Then some people couldn't apply. And then when Biden became president, it was back on. And now with Trump number 2, second administration, it's anybody's guess, right? So what has been discussed so that DACA recipients and other immigrants who live here aren't in this, political warfare game that we like to play with people's lives. Instead, we get it codified. We get it passed through Congress. We get the president to sign it into law. That becomes harder for a new president to remove it. Obamacare, anybody? So with that being said, this piece of legislation has been with Congress, some variation of it, for a while. The Dignity Act, this particular piece of legislation, actually was originally authored, at least the latest version, was authored in 2023. It never actually passed the House, and it just kind of died. Now it's been reintroduced by a congressperson still within the House, and it's now within the Judiciary Subcommittee, as well as the subcommittee that deals with pieces of legislation that affect Homeland Security. So this kind of brings us to a bigger question. How does Congress work, right? So we have to understand, and this is why it's important to be careful with viral videos, because this piece of legislation is going to have a while to go before it even makes it to the president's desk to be signed into law. Because the way a piece of legislation works is somebody authors it, somebody in Congress, in the House authors it, they author it, and then it gets sent to the subcommittees within Congress or within the House that have to do with that topic. So this piece of legislation obviously deals with taxing individuals who are applying through the Dignity Act. It does have conversation or wordage of them having to pay a fine, $1,000, $10,000. Again, whatever's written there doesn't mean it's going to become the law because there's going to be markups, right? But we know it's going to have to go to Appropriations Committee, and a committee that deals with the money, right? What is the purse, if you will, of the United States. So it's going to have to be reviewed through there and have those markups. It's going to have to go through the subcommittee, which it is currently in right now, that deals with Homeland Security, that deals with who gets to come in and how do we screen them, safety, border safety. It's going to also have to go through the Judiciary Committee to determine that we're not trampling on any potential constitutional rights in terms of taxations. Are we allowed to tax them? Is that against the Constitution? And those, at least those three committees, if not more committees, will then mark up that piece of legislation. Once they mark it all up, then everybody has to get together and make those markups into one comprehensive bill. And then that has to pass a vote in the House. Once it passes the vote in the House, it then is going to go to the Senate. Guess what? Senate also has committees. So now we're going to do the same process we did in the House with the Senate, and they're going to have their markups. And then they're, depending on how bad the markups is, it might even get kicked back to the House and say, hey guys, we marked it up so bad that it's pretty much a new bill and now you guys got to vote on it again. Or no, it's not that bad. We can actually pass it through the Senate, and then we can have a vote in the Senate. If the vote passes in the Senate, then it would go to the president to actually sign it into law. There is a probability that if it gets to a president's desk, it might not even be President Trump, because we're discussing the process of making a bill into law, and that can take years. And not only can that take years, but you also have to consider if that's going to be in that political congressman or congresswoman's agenda throughout this entire process, or are they going to shift their focus because their constituents have shifted their own focus as well, which could also further delay. So it is a political thing. It's basically, you have their attention right now, but do you have their attention enough to get through this entire process? But the good news about that is, if it is a political game and it is about keeping your congressperson's attention, that is why you need to go out and vote. If you believe in this bill and you are permitted to vote, midterm elections are here. Vote for a representative that's backing this bill. That's gonna get them reelected. That's going to hopefully push this bill to continue to be something that they debate and talk about and get to the president's desk for signature. The other thing is what we keep doing right now, where we see horrific things that are happening as it relates to immigration and immigration laws, and we're being loud about it, and we're saying, hey, this isn't humane. This isn't the way that we should be treating immigrants, and that there's got to be a better path, and the legal way isn't always the most sensible way, because these laws are very old and they take a very long time and circumstances change. So, keeping those dialogues and those conversations happening and educating yourself and educating people around you will obviously assist with keeping the pressure on your congressperson to understand this is something that's important to their constituents and they can't necessarily forget about it. So hopefully, if we keep doing our part and we don't just listen to viral videos and say, yay, my auntie can now apply and everything's going to be great, and instead we educate ourselves and we keep our government officials accountable, we can see this bill become law. And if and when it does, I promise you, we will let you guys know, and we will assist your auntie in being able to get her paperwork. Thanks for listening.